Good morning. My name is Samantha Sam Hayes, and I am here to talk to you about C.A.R.'s new June 2026 new and revised forms. A little bit about me. I'm a certified CAR forms trainer, transaction coordinator. I'm certified zip forms and AR short sale foreclosure resource, certified probate specialist, a realtor, and a notary. I've done over 7,500 transactions at this point in the past 23 years, and I really do love this stuff. I'm a huge CAR forms nerd, and I'm happy to talk about this anytime. Excited to be here and talk to you about it. A little bit about me. I'm all about frontline risk management. I focus on primarily boutique independent brokers and agents. I'm all about focusing on going to court. I look at every file that it's going to have to be defended, and I want everything in writing to take care of my clients so that they can take care of their clients. I reduce administrative friction, provide transaction integrity, and restore time and mental bandwidth. I get to do what I love, which is be here and play with all these paperwork so you can go out and do what you love, which is showing properties and making sales. I allow real estate agents and their brokers to focus on business generation, leadership, and growth while supporting as an on-call administrative support team, risk management consultant, forms expert, big nerd who will call you up and go, oh my God, we got to deal with this. I'm here to help you because I am fearful so you can be fearless. I want you to be able to be out there and fly, and I can catch the little pieces. What we're going to talk to you about today, what's important is the RLA. There's clarification regarding the unrepresented buyer payment, the seller advisory, talking about FinCEN, wholesale buyers, open house risks and safety precautions, the BRBC regarding assignments and who still stays responsible. The RPA, there's many levels about the different kinds of credits, appraisal gap, septic, propane, and well, when you can use contingency removal, and also FinCEN. The changes to the counters, that's with liquidated damages and appraisal shortage. The new updated septic, both the cost, and then we have a questionnaire very similar to the SPQ. The AOAA clarifying who represents this buyer, we've assigned it, what happened. And the SPQ, those previous docs from an escrow that might have fallen out, or if your brokerage previously represented that seller, those need to be provided to the clients. Big reminder, if you have anything in zip form that you just, oh, I'll just copy that file we wrote last week, that'll be fine. Don't do that. If you need templates set up, please give me a call. I'm happy to help you and walk you through it, but only the templates get updated with the new forms. If you copy any of your previous files to just do a quick reuse, it will not have the current forms. Take the time to get it set up. Questions, feel free to give me a call. It's a pretty easy thing to walk you through. Reminder, this is for education only. You're going to need to verify all with the broker of record of the file you're working on, and this is not legal advice that I am giving. With that, let's get into it. We're going to start at the listing agreement, work our way through the contract, and then go through the different addendums, and then we'll finish up with the SPQ, getting to the disclosure portion. Starting with the listing agreement. When we have this additional compensation for seller's broker for the additional effort needed to facilitate if a buyer is not represented. So you have an unrepresented buyer come into your listing and say, hey, I want to buy this, but I don't want anybody to represent us. First thing you're going to do before you send over any offers or anything for them to look at or work with them at all, get that buyer non-agency signed. I have always told this to my clients. I definitely think it's important. We need to establish boundaries from the beginning. You are not representing that buyer. You are, though, able to negotiate with the seller. Hey, what if we get an unrepresented buyer? I'm going to have to do extra work. I need compensation for that. That's what this is for. This is not dual agency. You don't automatically start representing that buyer when you do this. If you were to represent the buyer and go into a dual agency, you would need the buyer broker agreement. As we now know, there are 3 contracts in every transaction. First, we have the listing agreement. That's between the agent and the seller. Then we have the buyer representation broker compensation, the BRBC. That's between the buyer and the buyer's agent. And then we have the purchase agreement. That's between the seller and the buyer. So we don't bypass that buyer broker agreement because that would void out and you'd be breaking the law against AB 2992, the NAR settlement, all the fun stuff we've been going through the past few years. You're going to have to get that contract if you're going to be representing them. This is not dual agency. This is just saying, hey, we have an unrepresented buyer. They're going to need some extra help. It's going to cost me some work. I need to be compensated, seller. That's all this is at. Again, this also clarifies in C, in the RLA 4C that no other brokerage company is involved. That's it. They're not represented. We've done the non-agency, but I'm going to have to do this work to get this deal through. I'm going to have to communicate with them. So it's a little bit extra work. Make sure you talk to your broker of record how they want to process this. I think personally, this is going to end up in lawsuits. I think this is a really bad call. Or for transparency, we need the same option if you've got a BRBC and then you then you have a FSBO, because that's a lot of work too. I brought it up actually on our training and I was told, no, it's not as hard when it's a FSBO. We all know that's not true when we're there in the field and working out there. So be careful about this. I would double check with E&O and your broker. I think it's a dicey one. I think if we get a lawyer or something goes sideways, especially if you don't have the buyer non-agency signed before anything else, you could have some issues. So make sure you're just double checking and covering yourself. The other thing with the RLA is all the reports you're supposed to be ordering. You're supposed to be ordering the NHD, the PR, whatever you list in this section, supposed to be ordered within 5 days of executing the RLA. Seller's still responsible for those reports, even though you as the agent or your TC or administrative assistant ordered them. That is a seller responsibility and it is their financial responsibility, whether or not the escrow closes. This is clarifying they have financial responsibility. Now they've changed the bundling. So now we're bundled with the PRBS, which is now going to be with just the listing, or the PRBC, or excuse me, PRBS-B, that one's going to go with the BRBC. The CCPA won't be with the RPA anymore. It's now going to be bundled with the RLA and the BRBC. Basically, what they're trying to do is before you go under contract, we're telling you about that we might represent both sides, that you have consumer privacy abilities, and then we're also bundling with the RLA to manage expectations of the seller. Hey, there's disclosure information advisory. You're going to have to disclose things. This is a requirement. This is part of the transaction. We're managing expectations ahead of time. I think it's a really good thing. I think it's getting ahead of it. I've always included the DIA when I have assisted with listings and popping them into DocuSign for my clients. I'm all about getting us all on the same page ahead while it's calm, before we're in a panic and racing around. And then, conflict arises when expectations differ. And if we can manage everybody's expectations and let them know the play-by-play ahead of time and what's coming, you're going to have a much smoother escrow. We also need to remember, we do this all the time. These forms to me, I'm like, blah, 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 blah. I speak CAR forms. It's what I do, or zip forms. Not everybody else does. And it's something to remind people, because nobody wants to feel that they don't know what's going on. So we have to be there as the educated experts in these topics, walk our clients through it. So not a problem. It's what I live and breathe. Of course I should know it. That's why you hired me. Let me help you. So it's a great time to have it as part of the review and part of your listing presentation. Seller advisory also got updated. We're dealing with the FinCEN. They've removed the FRRR. This is still up in the air. Texas put a stay on it. So nationally, it's kind of on hold. However, it still could come to pass. What's going to be required, this is explaining to the seller how this could impact the transaction. Going into wholesale buyers and potential pitfalls. We all know and have our horror stories of going into a wholesale buyer, a flipper, somebody who comes in and they tell us one thing and suddenly we're signing to somebody else, or they're lock us down and then we're getting renegotiated, or all those things. This is explaining this is a potential issue. I think this is a really good paragraph to also review with your sellers. There might be the right opportunity for them. You never know. We can't make that decision for them. However, we can share with the seller experiences and potential pitfalls that may show up, so that they can be educated and they can decide how they want to proceed based on their situation, timeframes, finances, whatever makes the most sense for that transaction. Another reminder about open house risks and considerations, safety precautions. Lock your stuff up. You will be on your marketing. This is now saying, hey, this property is up on the market. People are going to expect it might be vacant, or we're going to have different people going through the property. Have them secure their personal items, their medical items. Make sure everything is in secured areas. Help them understand people are going through. And while you'll do your best, nobody can watch everybody all the time. It also discusses, do you have any video cameras going? Are you tracking anything? How we need to make sure that's posted. Go through this with your clients. This is why it benefits you taking the listing agreement, doing your listing appointment. Go through it point by point. How do you deal with it? Do you have to bring other people with you to your open house? Do you have a checklist for them to go through? Do you go through the property and look at it and go, hey, that's got to be put up, that's got to be put up? What is your and your broker's policy? Something to look through, and definitely a selling point that might be able to be used during your negotiations of taking the listing, of how you're already addressing this and being ahead of it for your clients and letting them know what they need to be aware of. It's not something anybody thinks of. We go in and out of people's houses all the time because that's what we do. But if you're not used to it, you're not thinking in those terms. So helping get the mindset changed, managing expectations, one of the benefits you can bring, and definitely now being addressed. The buyer representation, broker compensation, the biggest thing is saying, hey, if you assign this, you're still responsible. If that assignee disappears, you are still responsible. They are still entitled to compensation. I want to make sure you get paid. Agents work too hard. We need to make sure you get paid, so we don't want any wiggle room. This is also showing that we're now bundling, as we talked about, with possible representation of one or more buyer. And that could be not just you as the agent, that could be your whole brokerage. Remember, that's under anybody under that broker. So if you're working with one of the bigger companies, the possibility of somebody who might be at a different branch representing is high. Going into the Consumer Privacy Act as well. So all that will now be with the BRBC. You're not going to see that with the RPA like we did before. There's a lot of little nitty-gritty things in the RPA that got updated. That's one of the things why you got to make sure you're using the correct template. We're doing this correctly. Other seller credits. So we know we have, I just need a credit towards recurring, non-recurring closing costs. Well, what if they're getting a carpet allowance? Or what if we're doing a 2-1 buy down? What if you are doing something where maybe the seller's going to pay, or we're asking for the first year of the HOA to be paid? What if we're asking for part of the assessment to be paid? Those type of things. Before you write this, though, talk to the lender that you're working with. Verify what verbiage they need. There may be some sort of phrasing that could red flag an underwriter, and we could have some problems. Take the time to have the conversation when they're asking for these credits, or what we become partners with the lender. You guys have got to work together. We need to know what they need for their paperwork, what we need for our paperwork, so we can make sure it's properly documented, everybody achieves what they need, and we're not delayed because we got to redo it. It wasn't done right in the beginning. The other thing is about the appraisal gap. So this is saying that as long as we are at the appraisal price, that we're at the purchase price, excuse me, or maybe they'll bring in 10,000. Maybe it's they love the house so much they don't care, they want it, they're going to live there for 20 years. Maybe, okay, I'll do a difference to 50,000. You're going to put a dollar amount there, and that's to ensure and protect your client. Now, you don't have to do this. You can just say it's only at the purchase price, but it really could be a negotiation tool you might want to consider. Again, talk to the lender, find out where you're at, run a CMA. We know that we don't get to set the prices, the market sets the prices. So have some reality-based conversations and get that third-party information. What is the market saying? What does the lender say? What do we need? What is the likelihood in this area? And also, what is the best benefit fiduciary-wise to our client, both buyer and seller? Is this something the seller needs to go and they're aware that, hey, the market is always changing and we're not sure, or hey, buyer, you're going to be here for 20 years. Maybe it's worth the stretch. That's a conversation you're going to need to have and find out what's going on and what makes most sense. Septic. So if you're not used to doing rural properties here in San Diego County, we have a lot of properties that are unincorporated. Some of the stuff with all the canyons and whatnot. I'm actually in the 92116 and they've tried to put us on septic because I'm on a canyon out here. Make sure you're aware of that. Take a look at the MLS before you go. Look around the property. Do you know the area? If you're working in some place that's out of area, not your usual, maybe you do condos typically, and suddenly a friend of the family would like to buy a piece of land up in Julian. Work with another agent in your office, talk to your broker, make sure you've got somebody who's got experience on these type of files so you know what to look for and what to write in. This is a whole different thing, and obviously, anytime we add a paragraph to the contract, there's been some legality, or the legal hotline has had enough calls about it that, hey, this is an ongoing problem out in the field. So this is now going to automatically be, you mark the box and we're going to trigger. There's two, they've separated out the septic propane well form. Somebody's calling it the SWPI. I can't do it. It hurts my soul. I just can't. I'm sorry. The SWPI, I mean, I already have to go when we're talking about requests for repairs and sound like a pirate. There's just a limit. But what we're going to do with this is going to allocate the cost. But this is the cost for just getting the reports. Then you're going to negotiate if the repairs need to be done on the request for repairs. Very similar to when we used to have the wood destroying pest, pulled that out, said, no, you guys write in the report, and then you negotiated in the request for repairs. Part of that is to separate out some of those negotiations away from the lender, since the request for repairs is not part of the contract. It's also to help for better documentation and make sure you may want to cap it. You may know that this seller has had this family property out in the East whatever, and nobody's been out there for forever. You may want to preemptively get the septic inspected. You may preemptively want to know. It may make sense. What if that well has not been used in 1,000 years? Go check it out. What about the propane? When was it last filled? Who gets what? Typically it should just go to the buyer, but is that something being negotiated? Depends on the situation and the client you have. Ask questions, take the time, do the research. The more information you have, the more knowledge you have of that property, you're going to be able to negotiate it at such a better point, and you're going to be a rock star, and then you're going to get referrals and have the best real estate career of your life. Yay, you. But it takes time, and you got to do the effort. It means you got to do the work to do this part ahead of time, which means doing the homework. Not always the most fun. The loan can only be used for the loan contingency, not appraisal or insurance. We broke this out. We being the industry, C.A.R. Realtors in California. This was broken out. If you look at the contingency removal now, from when I started, back in the day of the faxes and the pagers, it was a couple of things. Now it's like 12, 15 different, and you can like sub which inspection. There's a reason. These were all problems. Do not remove an appraisal contingency till you have a copy of the appraisal on file that you know it came in value. Do not remove the insurance contingency till you have in writing from the insurance company that yes, they will insure the property. This is part of the fiduciary with your client. I have had situations where they didn't do that and suddenly loan's not going through. Oh, well, we don't have insurance. Well, that's not a loan issue. The loan's good. You just don't have insurance. Oh, well, the appraisal. Oh, we got a problem with the appraisal. Well, the appraisal is about the property. The loan is about the human who's trying to purchase the property. So if the property now is not appraising, why'd you remove that appraisal contingency? Circling back to, as we talked about at the beginning, have the conversation with the lender. Get connected with the lender. I understand notices to perform make us all feel, oh my God, I got a notice to perform. I'm clutching my pearls. It's not a big deal. It is an administrative tool. It is not an emotional attack. It is to say, hey, these were the timeframes. If you need more time, that's why we have an extension of time addendum. Both of these tools exist in the contract for a reason. You're going to want to utilize them, but do not suddenly go, well, today's the day and we got to remove everything. Also, remember, you can't demand performance on a weekend or a holiday. And you have till 11:59 of the day of performance to perform. 5 o'clock's not our cutoff. That's all in the contract. That's all underneath terms and days and everything else. Review this with your client. Make sure everybody's aware of what the things are. A lot of us kind of make answers up in our head and then we don't go do the research. I'm a big fan of, I want to touch it. I want to see this was a contractually agreed to item. I want to show you where there was a meeting of the minds, buyer and seller. This is what is in writing. I don't care what your opinion is. This is what's in writing. And that's what we need to be able to circle back with, especially with loan and all of this for removing your contingencies. Don't do it till you got proof. And then don't try and play games. I mean, again, you don't have to explain why you're removing contingencies. You don't want to give details. It's just per this 3L3 investigation, 3L1 per the loan, 3L2 per the appraisal. That's it. Don't go into details. Don't keep, that's not to be shared. You don't have to share it. You have fiduciary to your client to protect them. Getting off that soapbox. This is circling back to, like we've been talking about, the septic. It's now its own paragraph and it does a trigger, just like we have solar does a trigger. The wood balcony stairs addendum is a trigger. Everything else, if it's in there per the contract, we need to provide these extra documents. And the SWPI-Q is very similar to the SPQ. We'll go through that here in a little bit. Very similar thing. You're going to want to get that over to your client as soon as you know on the listing, hey, we've got septic. Great. Let's get that in there as a disclosure. FHA VA loan appraisal. Did you know you need to give that to them if you remove contingencies or if you cancel? Because the FHA VA is tied to the property. We've got to give that appraisal over to the seller. They may have to get it released if you cancel and then go on to somebody else. They need that document. So it does need to be shared, but you don't have to do it till you remove the contingencies. Demand to close escrow. Okay, so we have a couple of things. Notice to perform is to perform. That means return the disclosures, provide that you're signing for an entity, provide contingency removal. There's a laundry list on both sides. I can notice the buyer, I can notice the seller. We need to do this. Administrative document, again, it's saying, hey, time's up. Come on, let's get going. Demand to close escrow can be issued prior to removing all contingencies. If we were supposed to close in 15 days, what's going on? Now, if the seller wants to cancel after doing a demand to close escrow, which they can, and the buyer did not perform, then we're getting into this whole issue. Is the buyer actually still acting? Is there a reason why? You're going to want to talk to your broker, have them review this with you. Maybe a situation that, look, they're still acting in good faith. We got to work with them. Also, if they've not removed all their contingencies, do not tell the seller we've done a demand, they have to give us the deposit. We don't know that. That is not our call. It's actually in Section 8 of the RPA stating the deposit is the buyer's. We don't get to speak on that. There's no guarantees. Now, likelihoods and things like that, different conversation. If contingencies have been removed, different conversation. That's why we have the mediation arbitration. That's why you have the ability to talk to your E&O, talk to your broker. If you're starting to warm up to having one of these problems, have the conversation ahead of time. Then you can have all the tools you need and know, hey, this is what worked on this deal. Maybe we should talk about this. Let's find out. The whole goal is to buy and sell. We're not adversarial here. We do need to take care of our clients. We have offense and defense, just as we would on any type of thing when you've got two teams meeting up. But end goal is that we have a win-win. We have a happy buyer who's bought a property that they love. We have a happy seller who's been able to move on from the property that they loved at the time, but now need to be done with. That's the goal. How do we get there? How do we keep it from being adversarial? And how do we work together with communication? So that's why we have these things like demand to close escrow and everything else, because while the communication is important, documentation of the communication, the forms, emails, something like that, so we can prove it in court. They all go hand in hand and work together. Make sure you're using your tools properly. Make sure if you have any questions, ask your broker. I'm happy to go through stuff with you. I'm always going to defer you to the broker of record of the file you're working on. I'm going to tell you to talk to CAR Legal. I'm going to tell you to check with your E&O to make sure you're protected. But if we can find some quick answers and get you some solid things where we can touch, like I literally go, let me touch the contract. Like I want to look at it. I want to be able to screenshot it. I want to be able to know, yep, this is exactly it. Here it is. It's not a gray area. I don't ever want any of those on a transaction. I want to make sure we're very direct because we do have contracts for that reason. Meeting of the minds. FinCEN reporting, this is going to replace the FRR that's been the additional document. Again, this is still up in the air. This could change at any time. But right now, this is how we're moving forward. It's going into the contractual requirements. We need to go ahead and if this is a situation on your file, give me a call or talk to your broker, talk to your escrow officer. We want to make sure ahead of time when you're writing an offer, if you've got somebody all cash from an entity, this is very detailed now what's going to be required, including any of the beneficiaries of the entity, any beneficiaries of the trust, all of those things. It's a bigger issue than you think. They're cracking down on it really hard, but they're still confused on how they're going to crack down on it and document that. So talk to your escrow, talk to your lender, or not your lender, excuse me, because it'd be cash. Talk to your broker of record and what they want to have on file and how we need to make sure that it's explained to that buyer. The AOAA has also been updated. And what was with this is saying, yes, if I sign this contract, then that broker is who I'm assigning you over. Then that means that this new buyer is responsible for the agreement in the BRBC as well. I would do an MTBR. I would probably do that to say, hey, we've done an AOAA. This is now being assigned to this other person. I like to over document stuff, but that's up to you. Also, what if the assignees were represented by a different real estate broker? How is that getting handled? How is that stepping away from? And what do we do for compensation for you? Does this new broker come in? Are they getting a referral fee? What's being negotiated? Have conversations before we get to this paperwork. Let's ask about it. Why are we bringing this person in? This is where we're also dealing with some of the wholesalers. This is when we're dealing with some of the other issues that can come up. Make sure you're getting all the info before we go to documents. Let's get it as clean and clear as possible and make sure everybody has in writing what's expected of them. This also clarifies that if that buyer assigns it, but the assignee disappears on us, that buyer is still responsible. That buyer is still responsible for compensation to you if that file closes. That buyer is still responsible to making sure that you were taken care of and any agreements that they made in the transaction. So we want to refer this and review this that ultimately the original buyer is always responsible till the file closes, and then the assignee is taken on everything. In the counters, so this, I don't know if I explained this as well as I should have in Mary Jane's class that we just wrapped up, but bottom line, I am a big fan of keep the whole contract together. I think you should keep the whole contract together. I think it should all be signed together. That's why we have counters and negotiations. That's my thought. I understand there are different legal takes and everything else. I do know from the processing point of view, myself, escrow lender, whatever, title, when we don't have a fully contract and then we're running around, they can't start, I can't start, we don't have all the info, we don't have it fully executed, we have a buyer who could walk around, we waste so much time. Where a few extra minutes right now, 5 minutes versus the 30, 40, 60, 3 days, it could cost you in an escrow by not keeping it all together. But say you can't, whatever reason. Then if you want liquidated damages included, because remember, if it's not initialed before everything's executed, doesn't count, we can mark this box and say this is included, and that addition adds the form and the verbiage that meets California law. And that's the big deal, is liquidated damages relates back to California law, and we want to make sure it's properly documented. So that's why it's such a red flag and why they brought this up. Now with the down payment, the loan amount, the deposits and credits, remember, unless you change it, everything will be adjusted in the same proportion as the original offer, but the dollar amount of any initial and increased deposit and credits won't be changed. So if you change your purchase price or you change some of that stuff, be careful. You want to make sure that you also update, like you want it to be a certain percentage of how much you want the deposit to be. You want the increased deposit to be a certain number. Credits will be a different number. What if you suddenly are coming back and we've reduced the price and we have too many credits? We've got a buyer expecting this number and then thinking they might get a check after close. Doesn't happen. Managing expectations. Or we've got a seller who's now on the hook for more than they should have been. It can go either way. Or we don't have enough credits now because you've upped the dollar amount and the buyer needs more help with their closing costs. Pay attention. Circle in the lender. Get all the details. These little nitty-gritty things. I know it's exciting to negotiate it, and I am here for it, and I love everybody doing what they love. Slow down. I know it's urgent. I know it's not been the easiest market. Make sure you're taking care of this. Make sure we're getting all the info correctly and doing it correctly. Same thing with that appraisal contingency gap we talked about. Okay, so suddenly I made an offer for 1 million bananas, but now they want 1,000,001 bananas. Well, I only said I'd come down 50 bananas, so that still stays 50 bananas. It doesn't change because we increased it by 100 for this offer. Pay attention to those little bits. That stuff does not change unless you rewrite it in your counters. Take a few moments, really read through everything, catch all the stuff, breathe through, get a second set of eyes on it, and go from there. Have your broker look at it. I'm always happy to look over forms. I, again, am always going to direct you back to the broker of record, your E&O and car legal, but I can tell you what I see on the document that you've provided. Now we're going to switch over to that fun thing about the septic I was talking about. So we've added to this, and this looks very familiar to the previous form. I would suggest, before I even get into that, there's also this EPA septic new homes. There's two brochures, one's in Spanish, one's in English, and then there's a guide. If you are helping a client who has never lived in a situation where they have septic, propane, or a well, you're going to want to have them look at these guides and brochures prior to, and even almost have them acknowledged with the offer. It is a very different situation. It's a different maintenance, different costs, different responsibilities, different processes than being on city when we're on septic, or excuse me, when you're on sewer, water, everything to the city. Totally different situation. Also need to know about deliveries. What do you do if it runs out? What do you do if you have a leach field issue? What do you do about all this stuff? You need to work with somebody who understands this and make sure your clients understand it is a different type of purchase and what the responsibilities that come with it. This goes through who's going to be responsible for what. That's the excavation. That's the action of excavation. Well, what if we excavate it and the lid's bad? Or what if the seal's bad? Or what if something got broken during the pumping? You're going to want to, or you're going to have to negotiate that in the request for repairs. That's one of the things that this does not cover that. And that's here at the bottom. If needed repairs to the septic or system, otherwise bring in compliance, you're going to have to do further written agreement, request for repairs. And we've got to do that either way. It's prior to remove the loan contingency, or maybe you've created a contingency for investigations specifically to septic. Maybe you've added something on. Be careful. Make sure you're paying attention to all this. And then bottom line, the certification is to delivered prior to. All the others, the investigations, the inspections, those are going to match your 3N3. That's delivery of seller documents. Typically defaults to 7 days. You may have negotiated something else. That'll also go there, but similar to like pest clearance, I just need it before going to docs usually. So you're going to need it before close of escrow. That's when, so that's the difference there. That's trying to run the parallel. Same thing if we've got well, if you got your perk test, propane, have we topped it off? Are they going to have it refilled before? Who's going to pay for what? Do we owe some of it over to the seller? What are you guys negotiating? That's all up for negotiations, and you need to make sure you're aware of it. Now, this is the questionnaire that's going to go with the septic, well, and propane. If the seller doesn't know, they don't know. Per CAR training, the legal live, if they don't know, then it's a no. They don't know. It's what are you aware of? If they're not aware, they're not aware. Pull this out and have them start looking at it before you go under contract. Give them time before, as I was just telling in one other class. I have a deal right now. We got stuff late. They've already got everything boxed up in Nebraska. They've got to figure out how to go get me receipts out of Nebraska with family. It's a mess. So the more we can do as soon as we take the listing, the better off it is, because you as an agent will have more information to better negotiate on behalf of your client. We know how to mitigate if there are problems. Maybe we have different reports signed off before they even accept the offer because we've told you, look, you knew even before you wrote this offer, this was an issue or this was a challenge. Take the time to do the research. Working with a TC like myself, who's very focused on that, I start building the file the second you sign a BRBC or an RLA. I want to be CC'd on everything. I don't care if you write 75,000 offers, that's fine. But let's get every single one of those offers has to be in the files. Same with this with the disclosures. Let's do it as early as possible. Let's give everybody as much time as possible to pull this stuff. We're all busy and moving's not easy. Plus, what if they find something when they're moving? I'm like, just send it on over. I don't care if we're 2 days before close. We got to disclose this stuff. It is better to disclose than not. Give everybody the info before close. It's much bigger deal. So verify all with the broker of record, but yes, you're going to need to get this over. This is now going to need to be in the disclosures and go through and explain this all. I heard, unfortunately, from Glide, they're not going to add this to one of the ones that's easy to fill out. You may need to go through Seller's Shore, or I believe SkySlip's got an online software that you can fill stuff out with. Let's see. It's not a Zoom unless my phone goes off. The SPQ, this is getting towards the end here. I've always done this. This is the way I've always run my business. So I always feel super validated. I won't lie. I'm like, haha, you're all catching up with me. I have done this for forever and everybody thought I was insane. Any of the previous docs from an escrow that fell out, because we know buyers have to provide all contracts, or excuse me, all inspections, written documents, that's your estimates, that's your invoices, that's anything they had done to the property. If they did any investigating, that has to go to the seller at no cost. That's videos. If you're doing septic, I've had it when they've gone through the sewer lines, running the camera, and then had a buyer try and make the seller buy it off them when they were canceling. That's not how that works. You agreed in the contract that any investigations done to the property will be provided to the seller, even if the property cancel or escrow cancels. So that means any of those from a fallen out escrow, anything from when the seller bought the property, do they have reports and documents? Anything during their ownership? Did they have an insurance claim? Then I need all the insurance docs. I need the mold remediation. I need to know who the vendors were. I've been treating this the same way once that flipper law came into place a while ago. If you've done any work on the property, I want the list of the vendors. We want to put it on to the third party. We want to say, look, I'm not an expert in this. This is the person who did the work. Contact them. This is what I have as documentation. Again, everybody does the best of their ability, and what you don't know, what you don't know. But if we can say, look, this is who did the work, this is their information, this is what they're an expert in, get some answers that way, you're going to better insulate. And this is the history of the property. Disclosures are for the good, bad, and ugly. They are not marketing pieces. These are not, oh, look at no, this is not stuff like that. This is, we're interested. Let me give you all the dirt so you know what you're buying. Clear communication. That's why we have all these issues with transparency and everything else. It's better to get the scary out in the beginning, then everybody knows exactly what they're stepping into. Yes, the property is sold as is. If the pool is blue, the pool stays blue. If the grass is brown, the grass doesn't have to come up. You should probably take care of that. Probably not the easiest listing. But the point is, at the time of executed contract, So as long as we know if there's a problem and we know about it, let's let everybody know ahead of time. Let's mitigate it. Let's cap the cost for the seller. Let's address it. Talk about the elephant in the middle of the room. Do not ignore it. Ignoring it is what leads to lawsuits. Going, oh, it's okay. I talk to my clients, they're fine. I want an email that you talk to your clients. I want documentation you talk to your clients. 3 months from now, when suddenly they want to change all the paint in the house and they're looking for money, they're coming for you. And while I will happily have an angry agent broker at me for 2 days, 3 hours, whatever, and know that I did it right, even though I'm making everybody crazy over documenting because I want to be able to defend this file in court, I'm happy to do that because I don't want you spending 9 months of brain noise being tied up in a stupid lawsuit that didn't have to happen. And that's not only the cost of the lawsuit, it's the cost of your brain noise where you're not focused on the rest of your business. It's a huge impact. I don't want you dealing with that. I will make you angry and go, no, we're not doing this. And I will push because it's important. Your license is important. Your job's important and your career is important. So is mine. I love what I do. And I want to make sure you get to keep doing what you love to do for as long as possible. And if that means being crazy maker for a few minutes, I will happily do it. And making sure that you get to have smooth sailing, happy client that refers to you and you become that real estate rock star, I am here for it. That's what I believe in. Your success is my business. That's how I keep going. And honestly, I don't have a job without agents. So I'm definitely going to do everything possible to make sure you have the longest going career that you can. Again, always verify all with the broker of record of the file you are working on. I am not your broker working on becoming one, but I'm not that. So for that reason, you got to verify with your broker of record, and CAR Legal. I'm returning this summer. I hope to get videos back up. Probably going to be doing more like 2 a month. I was trying to do 4. We'll see how business goes. I'm always available though for an in-person training, a Zoom call, do a recording, break down a file for you. I love this stuff. And the more I can learn, the more I want to teach. So give me a call anytime. Happy to do it for you, your brokerage, for an escrow company, lender, if you need a reason to go get with the client, to get in front of agents, any of the caravans, let me know. TCs, I'm here to help. And as you can tell, I'll talk about it till I'm blue in the face. I love it all. Feel free to call me, even if I'm not TC of record on the file. I can give you my thoughts, what I see, but I'm always going to, again, tell you all my disclaimers. I also, if you got a problem child, you got a messy file, you got a file you can't believe this is going on, no judgment. I like it. I look at it like a puzzle. Let me help you figure it out. Let's see what we can do to protect you. Yes, I'm going to say things like, oh my God, we're going, okay, we got to, oh, because I'm passionate about this because it is your livelihood. I'm passionate about it because it's something I want to support. So I am Sam Hayes. This was Why with One Stop, June 2026, new car forums. Verify all with broker record of the file you're working on. Feel free to give me a call anytime, 619-993-7264. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.